At a London train station, train guard Joe is finishing his shift when he finds a letter in his locker stating he didn't get the promotion he applied for. He angrily crumples the paper. His supervisor appears and asks Joe to cover the night shift because the night guard is sick. Joe wants to say no, but ends up accepting when he realizes his crush, Helen, will be the trolley attendant that night. After the train departs, Joe begins inspecting passengers' tickets. Most show their tickets easily, but many get irritated and treat Joe poorly for doing his job. A woman drops her cane, and when Joe helps her, he's startled by a sudden growl. But it's just Mrs. Kate's dog. Kate says she lost her ticket and gets angry when Joe gives her a fine. In a corner, Billy changes into something more comfortable. Joe sees that the bathroom door has an out-of-service sign on it, and water is leaking from inside. When Joe bumps into Helen, he finally tries to ask her out, but Helen rejects him. The fact that passenger Paul is watching makes everything more awkward. For the next few hours, the train continues its journey peacefully under the rain and full moon, with passengers disembarking at each station until only a few remain. When they reach the forest, a loud scream echoes through the carriages, and the train stops. Joe starts walking through the carriages to see what happened and spots a shadow behind a door, but just as he's about to open it, he's startled by the loudspeakers. The conductor announces they hit something on the tracks and asks passengers to remain calm while they sort it out. Joe finally opens the door and discovers Helen's trolley has fallen over. He tries to lift it but can't, so Adrian ends up lifting the trolley. Joe finds 2 sets of keys on the floor and is surprised to hear they both belong to Adrian. Many passengers are panicking, so Joe does his best to calm them down. He also tries to contact the conductor, Tony, by radio, but gets no response, so he uses the loudspeakers to ask passengers for patience. Meanwhile, Tony steps out of the train to see what happened and discovers they hit a deer that is now caught in the wheels. He tries to pull it out but doesn't have enough strength. At that moment, Tony hears a noise behind him, and when he turns around, a mysterious creature attacks him and begins to devour him. His blood splatters on the window, but the rain washes it away before the others can see it. Back on the train, Joe gets tired of waiting and uses his keys to enter the control cabin, only to find it empty. He then looks outside but doesn't see Tony. After asking Helen to keep the passengers calm with some free snacks, Joe takes a longer look outside but still finds nothing. Joe calls the company's rescue team, who explain they're delayed because the storm has caused many accidents. The phone signal is bad and full of static, but Joe manages to find out they'll arrive in 4 hours. Joe then informs the passengers about the 4-hour wait, which causes panic when he says the conductor has disappeared. Complaints increase, so Adrian has to shout to calm them down. He points out they have no phone signal, so they should walk to the next station for help. Joe tries to explain that it's dangerous and he could lose his job, but the passengers unite against him, and he has no choice but to agree to be the guide. After Joe unlocks the door, the group exits in a line and walks alongside the train, unaware that someone is watching them from the forest. Eventually, they hear something moving in the bushes, so Joe and Helen go to investigate. To their surprise, they find Tony's mutilated body on the ground. The pair immediately return and tell the passengers to get back on the train as howls and growls are heard in the distance. It takes Joe a few seconds to unlock the door, and everyone rushes into the train in fear. An elderly couple is slower than the others due to their age, and when they finally jump inside, the monster manages to bite Jenny's leg. The monster shakes Jenny back and forth between the doors before the group manages to drag her inside and lock the carriage. They then take Jenny to a seat where Helen cleans the wound with water and does her best to bandage it. Billy and Matthew try to look out the window with a flashlight but can't see anything outside. When Joe checks the door to make sure it's securely locked, the monster hits the carriage and growls, so the group decides to stay as still as possible. They hear the creature's claws scratching the carriage and wait until they hear the howl, far from the train to speak again. Joe then goes to the control cabin to try to use the train's phone, but there's no signal. At that moment, Billy joins him and reveals he's an engineering student. Observing the controls, Billy realizes there's a fuel leak that caused the line to break when the train crashed. If they don't fix that, they'll never be able to move. Outside, the train's antenna is shown to be broken, implying the creature did it. Joe explains the situation to the passengers, who begin to argue about what kind of animal is attacking them. Adrian calls it a bear, but Nina points out that bears don't howl. Jenny says it wasn't an animal, but something more human, but everyone believes it's shock talking. Suddenly, they hear noises in another carriage and worry that the monster is trying to get in. Joe grabs a fire extinguisher and goes with Billy and Adrian to investigate. Carefully traversing the carriage, they discover the noise is coming from the bathroom. As Adrian prepares to attack, Joe unlocks the door, only to see Paul fall out. It turns out he had been trapped there since before the collision. The four return to the group and tell Paul the whole story, but instead of being scared by the monster, he's saddened about missing his stop. Later, they check Jenny's wound and notice it's getting worse. She also has a fever. Kate realizes Nina is young and scared, so she talks to her to comfort her, telling stories about her own daughter. Suddenly, the creature hits the door again and then jumps onto the roof, causing the train lights to start flickering. At that moment, Nina's phone gets a signal and she receives a call from her mother, but as she tries to call for help, the creature bursts through the window. The creature grabs Nina by the legs and drags her outside as she screams. Kate tries to grab her hand to help, but Matthew pulls her away because she would also be caught. They then hear the beast mutilating Nina on the roof, and her blood is seen on the windows. Terrified, the group runs to hide in another carriage, and Kate panics because no one wanted to save Nina. An argument starts until Jenny's husband Get yells for everyone to shut up and reminds them they need to work together to survive. The train has a toolbox, so the passengers begin to work on barricading every entry point of the carriage with pieces of the train itself, like the seats. Time passes and everyone feels more depressed with each passing minute. Jenny and Kate realize they didn't know Nina's name, and Jenny admits she could never have children, although she wished for them. In a corner, Adrian converses with Joe, explaining that he has 2 sets of keys because he has a nice place for his family and a secret apartment for his malicious adventures. He believes that doing what's necessary to survive, even if it's not legal, is the right thing to do and asks Joe to join him in escaping, leaving the weaker ones behind. Before Joe can respond, Jenny vomits a lot of blood and even 2 teeth. Another argument begins about what to do but is interrupted when Joe realizes Paul has disappeared. The barricade has moved and Adrian wants to put it back, but Joe and Billy convince him to give them a minute to find Paul. Joe goes to the other carriage and finds Paul trapped in the bathroom again. As Joe tries to open it, the bathroom light breaks and the beast enters from above to attack Paul. Joe has to back off when the door is damaged during the attack, and soon blood starts leaking from the resulting holes. He takes a quick look through a hole and is horrified to see Paul's dying body. He then tries to go back to the other carriage, only to discover that Adrian has blocked the door. Speaking of Adrian, he hears the noise and decides to get off the train to save himself by removing the barricade from the boarding door. However, it's locked and Joe has the key. Joe keeps pushing the door as he sees the monster approaching. Just as he's about to be attacked, the others finally open the door and drag him into the carriage before locking it again. As the group piles as many things as possible, Adrian tries to break the window with a fire extinguisher but can't. Unfortunately, the beast is very strong and breaks through the barricade, causing Helen to freeze. Fortunately, Joe acts quickly and moves her out of the way before the monster can hurt her. The creature tries to go after Joe, and as it growls in his face, Helen stabs it. The monster immediately turns around to attack her and throws her away. The guys take the opportunity to jump on it from behind, and start hitting and stabbing it with any available object. Billy is grabbed by the neck and pushed against the ceiling, only to be released when Adrian hits the creature's wound with the extinguisher. At that moment, Matthew arrives with a fire axe and begins to hit the monster repeatedly until he finally kills it. Kate has to pull Matthew away as he collapses seconds later. The group takes a closer look at the creature and notices a ring on its finger. As Jenny said, it looks very human, so Matthew concludes it's a werewolf. Adrian remembers that bitten people also transform, and now everyone is cautious of Jenny. While some passengers cover the body, Get tells the story of a train that derailed in this area many years ago. Authorities discovered many missing and mutilated bodies, but never found an explanation. He concludes that the werewolf killed them back then too. At that moment, the beast wakes up and howls, so Joe immediately starts hitting its face with the extinguisher. In the forest, other werewolves hear their dying leaders howl. Suddenly, Jenny's face begins to change, and she also growls. Adrian wants to kill her before she fully transforms, but Get won't allow it. The other passengers also push him back, but Adrian fights their resistance, refusing to give up. He breaks free and starts strangling Jenny, so Joe punches him to knock him down. The group then agrees to tie Adrian and Jenny with belts. Next, they decide on a plan. Billy will try to repair the train and teaches Helen which buttons to press to get out of there. As soon as the train responds, Joe gives a speech over the loudspeaker, trying to keep everyone's hope alive. Matthew and Billy get off the train and quickly find the leak. While Billy gets under the train to repair it, Matthew keeps watch. Inside the train, Kate reveals she had a passionate night with Adrian some time ago, but Adrian doesn't remember any of their one-night stands. Jenny begins to have difficulty breathing, and Adrian insists they must do something before it's too late. At that moment, Matthew hears a noise in the forest and goes to investigate, leaving Billy without light. In the forest, Matthew hears Nina calling for help and follows her voice, only to find her body on top of a tree, being devoured by a werewolf. Terrified, Matthew tries to flee, but soon werewolves surround him. He tries to defend himself with his axe, but it's useless, and the werewolves jump on him to devour him alive. On the train, everyone hears Matthew's screams as he dies, followed by a loud howl. Jenny freezes, and Adrian keeps asking Kate to kill her. Billy finally repairs the train, and the lights come back on. Joe and Helen then try to figure out how to control everything. Soon the werewolves approach the train, so Billy hides in the carriage until the monsters move away. Unfortunately, they appear at the front window and scare Helen and Joe, who finally manage to activate the train. Billy has to hold on to the carriage to avoid being left behind. Suddenly, Jenny finishes transforming, and Kate runs to free Adrian before Jenny breaks free with her new strength. Adrian tries to help Get, but Jenny knocks him down. At that moment, another werewolf appears at the door and grabs Kate, who screams for help. However, Adrian pushes her out of the train along with the werewolf. The train speeds up, and Kate is left behind, quickly becoming food for the werewolves. While Get tries to reason with his wife, Adrian tries to fight Jenny again, hitting her with a wrench. Furious, Get hits him before he can kill her. Then Jenny jumps on her husband and bites his neck, causing blood to gush. While Jenny tries to go after Adrian, Billy struggles to stay steady and accidentally breaks the repairs he made, causing the train to stop again. Joe and Helen rush out of the control cabin and stab Jenny before she can kill Adrian. Then a furious Joe jumps on Adrian to hit him, but Helen stops him. The werewolves take the opportunity to enter the train, so Joe and Helen rush to close the door. Adrian realizes he would have a better chance of escaping if someone stayed as bait, so he knocks Joe down. It's not enough to knock him unconscious, and Joe immediately reacts, unleashing a fight. While the men fight on the ground, Helen takes a sharp piece of metal and cuts Adrian until he lets go of Joe. While Helen takes care of her friend, Adrian blocks the way and takes the door keys before jumping out of the train. The werewolves quickly surround the couple, but before they can attack, Billy appears with a ready-made cocktail. He throws it at one of the werewolves, setting it on fire and causing a blaze. He then lights a torch and scares the other monsters, making them retreat to the other carriage. He gives an iron bar to Joe and Helen. This allows the couple to force the door open to get out of the train, while Billy is caught and killed. As Helen and Joe run through the forest, they hear the werewolves chasing them. Deciding it's too late, Joe kisses Helen before telling her to leave because he'll stay as a distraction. Crying, Helen finds a way to escape, while Joe begins to fight the werewolves with a piece of metal, managing to stab one of them. No matter how much he fights, the werewolves overpower him, and he ends up being bitten. Moments later, Helen reaches the next train station with Joe's dog tag in her hand. Meanwhile, Adrian continues running and finds some clothes on the ground. Suddenly, the werewolves surround him, and a newly transformed Joe jumps to attack him.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.